Oh my God, Lian Li is 40 years old. They've been doing such cool things. The original removable motherboard tray, the original all aluminum enclosure. Whew, they've been doing good things for a while, and things are even getting better. Let's go. And huge thanks to our sponsors for making this trip possible: Fantex, Thermaltake, MSI, and Cooler Master. Is this? So this is the SUP, a new 45-liter enclosure that is all about slim form factor, trying to minimize the footprint while still making it look beautiful without compromising on any of the hardware. So full ATX motherboard, full ATX power supply because of this chamber, and this entire front section for your GPU. So the concept is to move the GPU to the front. So the entire visual experience is to see it from here, but also not compromising on the performance of the airflow because of this mesh. Removing it, we can see the GPU still has enough breathing room. So first of all, you can see these screws. So this entire GPU bracket can move left and right. So depending on the height of the graphics card, you have some configuration there. It's got a 4-slot GPU so that whatever thickness you introduce into the new SUP, it's not going to be a problem. We have like so much length, over 390 millimeters. So all the longest graphics cards should fit here, and that's the whole idea of introducing a new enclosure into the market without, what's the word? Without introducing this case without compromising on the future compatibility of all the latest hardware. Now on the interior, this is really interesting because as you can see, we have an ATX motherboard, we have a Gen 4 riser cable that is very cleanly routed behind, and it's collapsible so that it's not going to introduce a lot of like really bunky and really chunky cable mess behind the motherboard. And this thing fits a 360 all-in-one cooler. There's a big opening right above the motherboard so all the tubes can route no problem. I feel like this is a really cool way to just also showcase your system. It's got a really nice low-profile riser cable that's going to be competing with whatever height is introduced, because I love this little RGB on the riser cable, looks absolutely gorgeous. My only concern is the cooling around the motherboard in terms of the RAM, some motherboard components, because there's no direct airflow in this chamber because the GPU has this intake and everything is being exhausted via the back. And the back is really cool, let's check it out. So here we have dual 360 compatibility, so you can have one set of fans on the radiator and another set of fans just for intake or exhaust. And I think they actually have the exhaust here and intake for the radiator, which is a really interesting way to battle the challenges of cooling in such a form factor. Still very open power supply chamber, some hard drive activity, and the only other concern is like routing your DisplayPort cable into the GPU. That's going to be a little bit of a challenge, especially because all this area is not very accessible. So I'm hoping by the time this thing launches, everything from A to Z, unboxing, mounting hardware, even things like plugging your DP cable will be taken care of. And also our Lian Li and reset buttons are built into the logo. So it's like you're being very intimate with the brand, you know what I mean? Price-wise, you're looking at $149, which I think is totally competitive for an enclosure that is trying to redefine how you're, where you're putting all the components. And another really interesting element is the mirror right above the power supply shroud, really reflecting whatever is happening right underneath the motherboard and giving you a much cooler illusion of like a taller space on the interior. And I don't know, I feel like that's really interesting. Now when we think Lian Li, of course we're thinking about the O11 series. So this is the O11 Vision, and if you think about the O11 original, it's 5 years old, and it's a really good way when you have the O11 that's been going through revisions and stuff that still reassembles the original. There's the DNA, and I'm very happy about that. Even though there are plenty of new features here, you probably notice the whole trend of removing the corner so that both the side and the front glass is totally open, that giving you that fish tank look. I definitely want to request this for my fish tank roundup for all the things that are new. But a few really interesting things here. So the top glass is also the top glass. The top panel is also glass. That means that you have this three-way look into your enclosure, and that poses a few challenges for cooling, but I feel like they figured out some stuff. So obviously we have good intake for the GPU. So 3 140s or 120s at the bottom, only a 360 radiator on the side, and so this is probably going to be very good for AIO. Don't even think about air cooling this thing. We have dual 120s at the back. The motherboard tray is removable, so we can install everything outside of the frame, just because when we remove the side panel, this front panel is exposed, so the corner is a little bit tricky to work with. So for example, you don't want to hit it accidentally and the whole thing just shatters and you're very angry at yourself. It also has a way to go up slightly to give you a little bit more clearance for the bottom, or keep it in the traditional orientation so that you can actually mount dual fans at the back. I would say airflow is covered for intake, exhaust, and exhaust. And also I will say the glass is beautifully tinted. There's no color hue to it. There's no weird green happening, no weird blue that used to happen with the Lian Li. So the vision is a very pretty enclosure. Let me know what you think. A few really interesting elements are the one-way mirror at the bottom, so that when you're looking at from the bottom, the mirror is reflecting your system. So it's a really interesting way to inverse the height of the enclosure. They do recommend to do push and pull for the radiator over here, just to increase the pressure and to increase the airflow. And because your all-in-one cooler will come with 3 fans, they can go behind the radiator, so they're not going to be visible, and you can use your pretty fans on the exterior to really match everything, which is awesome. There's a whole new cable management system at the back that allows you to reclip systems with 9 positions to really simplify cable management. And also at the back, the power supply is shifted back slightly, so the frame has a bit of an extrusion, but it gives you a little bit more cable management on the interior, which is all that matters. Price-wise, you're looking at $139, so very competitive. And now let's move on to the O11 Dynamic EVO XL, so a much larger enclosure with actually a few really needed improvements, so makes your life much easier when you're working with more components, larger enclosure, etc. So first of all, the motherboard tray is also removable. It now has, because we have additional height, we have more height positions available, so you can move it to the top position, and it seems like you have over 60 millimeters for all your radiator activities at the bottom, or move it down. Actually, you probably won't even need to move it down, but you could if you're doing really crazy push-pull at the top. The radiator bracket is, of course, removable. The motherboard tray is now wider too, to support slightly better for the arc of the exiting cables behind, so it's not going to interact with whatever you install on the side. So little things like that that make me appreciate and make you clear that they are also working with the enclosures as they designed them. So that's well done. Some other minor improvements are the toolless locking mechanisms for your PCI slots. They lock into the frame because of really strong magnets, and you just lock it with a thumb screw. So installation of your GPU and stuff would be much simpler. Don't need to use screws on this side. The hard drive cages here, since this is a very large enclosure, might be in the corner. This is now angled, also attached magnetically when it's back in its default position. So when it comes to removing your hot swap things, either at the top or the bottom. The I/O at the front is absolutely crazy. So 4 USB-A's, a USB-C, and the power button doesn't have Lian Li on it, but price-wise, you're looking at $235 for the black model, which still looks nice, but the white model is $10 more. And for something that can fit so much, and it seems to be a very premium building experience, and all the work cooling stuff, I would say it's pretty fair, but let me know what you think. Now the side brackets for all the O11 Dynamics is awesome because they slide in and they kind of lock in place. You can also rotate them, which is nice, but the side bracket on the XL version can mount a GPU, so that's a pretty interesting idea. And look, you can mount fans right behind it for additional intake to help with whatever cooling. Of course, the GPU is now facing down for all the cable management, but the bracket is easily rotatable, so you can mount it like this inside the enclosure without needing to rechange anything, remount everything. Whew. So why don't we check out the O11 RGB. All right, we're almost there. So the O11 RGB, you know, it's all the same things, but removed pillar, so more beautiful. Added lighting on the top and the bottom for more beautiful. Still removed motherboard tray for easier building assembly. If we remove this back panel, you can see still all the same stuff. The hard drive cage is now 2 individual hard drive caddies, so you can remove one while still using the other, not forced to occupy all that space by one single big hard drive cage like you did on the original O11D. On the interior, so the same bracket, motherboard tray can move up and down like before. Lots of airflow options at the top. The power supply is also extended slightly more back, giving you more room now on the interior for all your cables. That's exactly what you want. And seems just like a more refined O11D EVO RGB with just additional lighting. And of course, we do have buttons for mode control, for lighting effects. And from what I can see, beautiful, even illumination, that it's bright and vibrant. Price-wise, you're looking at $169 just like before. You're getting more of the case with the same price. I mean, what else, Eber, what else do you want? Huh? What else do you want? It looks beautiful.
Yeah, it looks really beautiful.
Oh, there's some coolers and some cool fans. Let's go talk to Mike.
So here we are with a couple of fans from Lian Li as well, because what they're doing is they are trying to push the limits of RGB fans. So what we have here is the Uni Fan TL. They're taking an ultra high performance fan blade and motor and putting it inside of a Uni Fan. That means it's extremely high static pressure, high airflow. It's meant to sit above the AL series and the SL series in terms of performance. The actual performance that they're targeting with this RGB fan is slightly above a Gentle Typhoon. So it's running at the same RPM level as the Gentle Typhoon, so around 2300, 2350. The other cool thing about it is that Lian Li is extensively updating their Unifan interface for it. So if you actually look in this case, there are 10 fans that are running off of one single connector. Not only do you control 10 of these fans with one individual cable, you can also control individual fans, not just groups. The other thing they have here is the TL LCD. This is a little bit more than a proof of concept. They're actually going to be producing this at some point. It's actually an LCD integrated into the fan hub of the fans. Now, it's not like you're going to populate your entire case with these because these are lower performance fans, but the cool thing about it is they're developing software so the display goes from one to another to another. You're actually going to see this guy sort of like run over here. I want to talk about how these TLs are also being integrated into a bunch of AIOs and taking those things' performance to the next level. The fans on this radiator are called the LCP 28. These are not meant for individual sale at this point in time, but they are going to boost the Galahad 2 Trinity's performance really to the next level. That's because they are tailor-made specifically for this AIO. First of all, if you look in the back where the radiator is visible, basically you have a double fin stack, and that double fin stack, what it does is it actually boosts the performance, but on the flip side of that coin, it actually increases the amount of static pressure that's needed for the fans to basically cool off the whole radiator. So that's why these fans are specifically tailored above any other fan in Lian Li's lineup, like the P28, for only static pressure, not necessarily airflow. Of course, airflow is boosted with static pressure as well, but we are talking about a 3000 RPM fan here, and it is tailor-made for performance. Not only that, but the Galahad 2 Trinity Performance actually has an in-house developed Lian Li pump inside. This thing is rocking at 4200 RPM. That is what's needed to make sure that everything here, so those double fin stacks, it's also a slightly wider radiator as well to accommodate those double fin stacks. I should also mention that the amount of water channels hasn't necessarily changed, but with that new radiator design, it's almost like 20% more efficient at conducting heat. Lian Li has actually gone ahead and sort of optimized for that height by incorporating probably one of the most stunning LED designs that I've ever seen. Like, check this thing out. Look at how even it is. So what you have is many, many individual LEDs inside of there that are in two zones. And the cool thing about it is there's absolutely no light spill from one zone to another. These heads are also interchangeable, so you can take out one of them, and this is why it's called the Trinity, because there's 3 different lighting configurations. Anyways, this is a very, very early sample. I don't want to break it. So that setup that you just saw is what is in the setup that we're looking at right over here. In addition to that, there is what is called a complete blackout middle. So you basically slot that in here, and then you put the secondary diffusion plate over it. I'm just going to leave this here. And what that gives you is almost like this donut effect, but also, and this is important, with an infinity mirror effect. Then, if you want like the full RGB experience, but you want to sacrifice sort of like 30 watts TDP performance, well, you're going to sort of like jump over here. Here what we have is a Galahad 2 Trinity RGB. So this sort of takes like a step down in terms of the fans, very high performance, high static pressure fans, but you get a more sort of classic radiator design. You've got a more classic Lian Li, dude. All right, and let's talk about these tubes for a second, because you might have noticed that there's something very, very different about them. And that's because they come out at a little bit of an angle, but they're also completely rotatable. Now that's a technology that Lian Li actually borrowed from the data center. So they actually have triple O-rings in there, so you don't have to worry about leakage over time or this breaking at any point. Of course, if you want to break it, I'm sure you're going to break it. So the last item that I wanted to mention very, very quickly here, if we come all the way to the end, is basically the Galahad 2 LCD. This is your Galahad 2 RGB, but just with a sexy little RGB screen. So anyways, I guess that's everything from Lian Li. I know there's been a lot, but anyways, I'm Mike from Hardware Canucks. Thank you very much for watching our Computex 2023 coverage, and I might see you in the next one. Take care, guys.